To Iowa now, where 2020 presidential hopefuls are this weekend, trying to win over voters in the key battleground state. Former Vice President Joe Biden leads the pack in a new poll from Mammoth University with 28% support from likely caucus goers in Iowa. Senator Elizabeth Warren is right behind him, as you see there. The candidates are focusing on beating President Trump as they attend events at Iowa State Fair. Ed O'Keefe takes a closer look.
The president, every word he uses, like Baldwin's right natural.
Former Vice President Joe Biden is not backing down from his comments linking President Trump to the growth of white supremacy.
This is an Iowa favorite.
His message resonated with at least some people here at the Iowa State Fair.
That speech yesterday you could give from now on until the election.
A new poll shows Biden maintaining his comfortable lead in Iowa. Senator Elizabeth Warren is now in second, up 12% from where she stood with voters 4 months ago.
Again, your competition can catch you.
Oh, look, anybody can catch you. You know, this is a marathon. I don't take anything for granted.
Warren is also campaigning in Iowa and was one of the first Democratic candidates to say the president is a white supremacist.
He can't keep trying to stir this up, give aid and comfort, be embraced by the white supremacists, and then say, oh, but not me. No, he's responsible.
Then there's California Senator Kamala Harris, who's hoping to boost her numbers here by launching a statewide RV tour and becoming the first major candidate to release a TV ad in Iowa.
That's what I'm fighting for.
But many voters we spoke to at the fair remain undecided.
Nothing that just strikes me where I say, I'm definitely gonna vote for that guy.
And that's who everybody's going after. Ed O'Keefe is with me now from Des Moines, Iowa. Ed, just how crucial is the Iowa State Fair? Can you break that down for us for these 2020 candidates, especially as former Vice President Joe Biden tries to keep his momentum going ahead of the February caucus? We showed some numbers. Elizabeth Warren on his tail.
Yeah, look, when about 100,000 people, most of them from Iowa, show up here, this is exactly the kind of place a presidential candidate has to visit and try to meet with voters. Biden was here yesterday, the Montana governor, Steve Bullock. Today it'll be people like Julian Castro, the former housing secretary. Most of the rest of the field shows up tomorrow on one of the busiest days at the fair. They'll try to get a fried Twinkie. They might eat a pork chop on a stick. They might go for a ride. And then we'll see. Jamie, I know you're from Minnesota,
yes,
right?
Of course.
Do we want to have that debate over whether the Iowa State Fair and the Minnesota State Fair is better?
I don't know that we should get into that. Oh, you have.
I have, because politics always takes you to these state fairs.
It does.
So, you know, if needed, we could get into that, but we won't right now.
That's okay.
Don't put me on the spot like that, Jamie. Come on, that's sensitive.
You know, Minnesota
look,
and Iowa.
Bottom line.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
We have a rivalry, and that's well known. So it's, it's just our state fair is a little bit bigger in Minnesota, but, that doesn't mean it's any better.
Right. We'll leave it at that because we'll get mail otherwise. But either way, this is exactly the kind of place the presidential candidate and their team wants to come, because you get to meet people who conceivably will either phone in their caucus vote or attend a caucus vote later this year. But one interesting thing we discovered yesterday, there are people now coming from across the country to attend this fair, not for the fried food, not for the Ferris wheel, not to see the Zac Brown Band Sunday night on the grandstand, but because the presidential candidates come here.
Wow.
And they have a chance to see them. We met a couple from upstate New York. Last night at my hotel, I met two lovely ladies from Memphis who literally have just flown in here to see the presidential candidates as if they're an exhibit, like everything else that you can see here at the fair.
Like the pigs and the chickens and the cows. Are they?
There's the pigs, the chickens, and the presidential candidates. Yeah.
Are they saying that they're coming to see anyone in particular, or a grouping of them, or?
No, I think the sheer volume of the field is part of the attraction. You can actually see, hear, touch, and meet so many of them in one place, and they too are just as undecided as Iowans.
Interesting. And, former Vice President Joe Biden was criticized for fumbling his words a few times yesterday. One in particular getting a lot of attention. The phrase he said, "Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids." Then corrected himself by saying wealthy kids, black kids, Asian kids. How are these situations impacting voters and Biden's presidential bid? Did they make any impact, or do they kind of just brush it off?
Well, so this one happened just last night, and so the Twitterverse and those of us who follow these things very closely caught it right away. it is just the latest example of him fumbling words, seeming to stutter through explanations of things. One other thing he did last night is he referred to Margaret Thatcher, the former British Prime Minister, when he admitted he was trying to refer to the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and this is the second time he's done this. Again, most of this stuff doesn't matter to the everyday voter. Certainly people will meet here today at the fair, but taken collectively, it is a line of attack. It is certainly an issue of concern, not only for Democratic voters, but for the other presidential candidates who can sort of use it against him and say, look, guys, do you really want to nominate somebody in his late 70s who would be well into his 80s once he's president? Is that exactly what we want to do? And we talked to people yesterday. We talk to people almost every week on the trail who say, I like the guy, a lot of respect for him, but do we really want somebody like that? Can't we find somebody a little younger? And that's where this conceivably gets used against him in the court of public opinion.
Yeah, and you can't change how old you are, for sure. So,
right.
Ed, several candidates set to deliver key soapbox speeches at the fair today, including Julian Castro, Andrew Yang, Marianne Williamson, a few others that we've seen. You're gearing up to interview Julian Castro. Can you tell us what you're planning to discuss with him, especially as he tries to qualify for the upcoming September debate?
That's right. He's on the bubble. At this point, he is conceivably, if he makes it the 10th person to make the stage, he's got to get a few more polls that put him at least 2% in an early primary state or nationally, and he's struggling to do that. An Iowa poll that we referenced there in the story puts him at 1% or less, so that doesn't help him. He's got to find some others in Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, somewhere that allow him to make that stage, because he's already hit the donor threshold. He's put out a plan just this morning that looks at concerns with gun control, crime, and how to deal with, as he says, just hate in America. And so that's a plan that he's likely to be touting here today and throughout the weekend and in the coming weeks. He's been credited by others for having a pretty aggressive plan on immigration and police reform and education, so now he'll add this to it. And he's brought his young family with him to be here for the fair.
And I'm so glad we could talk to you this morning. I'm glad they're doing some cleanup work, as I can hear in your live shot as well. So
they got to do it before they show up.
Yeah, exactly. So Ed, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Take care.